Welcome to the Lean Out Your Business podcast, a show dedicated to helping entrepreneurs accelerate business growth and simplify success. I'm your host, Krista Grasso, and I've been working with businesses for more than 2 decades to help them lean out and optimize what's working while eliminating anything that's not adding value. So if you are ready to get more time back in your day, more profit in your business, and to do business differently, growing and scaling on your terms, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. Today is a super special episode for a few reasons. Number one, this is our 100th episode. Believe it or not, this is 100. It feels like I've been doing this podcast for years at this point, and it also feels like I just started. So thank you for all of you who have been with me for all 100 episodes. Welcome to everyone who is new. But either way, today is a celebration. And what better way to celebrate than to bring back on the show the absolutely brilliant Annie P. Ruggles, who was my very first podcast guest back on episode 7. So you'll have to go back and listen to that episode because Annie is absolutely brilliant. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about her. But today we're going to talk about some different topics to kind of build off of that prior interview, which I do want you to go back and listen to because she is the queen of non-sleazy sales, which is what we had talked about in that last episode. Annie, thank you for being here with me for number 100.
Thank you for including me in your podcast birthday. Woohoo!
And you have your 100th episode coming out right about the same time.
Yeah. I'm stoked on us. 100 of something. And I was laughing. You said, I feel like I've been doing this show for years. You have been doing this show for years. But what a fabulous milestone. And I'm thrilled to be back.
Absolutely. All right. So let me tell you a little bit about Annie, and then we are going to dive in. Today's going to be more of a chat than an interview because Annie is absolutely brilliant. She's actually my go-to person. She's one of my secret weapons in my business. Anytime I need to strategize on marketing or really kind of figure LinkedIn out, which is a big thing that I'm focused on right now, or how to best leverage the podcast. And we're going to talk about all those things and more today. But for over a decade, Miss Annie has harnessed her Hulk-like disdain for hard sales, tacky self-promotion, and overly competitive sleazeballs as inspiration to help people find better ways to grow their small business. She's the founder of the Non-Sleazy Sales Academy, and through that, she's guided hundreds of people towards making deeper connections, lasting impressions, and friendlier, more lucrative transactions and conversations. Her pride and joy is her podcast, Too Legitimate to Quit, which is instantly actionable small business strategies with a pop culture spin. And not only is she about to celebrate 100, but I was on her podcast and we talked about one of my very favorite things on earth, which is Bret Michaels.
Bret Michaels.
So that is one you definitely need to listen to. Not only did we talk about some really great business strategy up front, but we also got to talk about why, in case you're curious, I have such a love and appreciation for Bret Michaels. And believe it or not, there's actually a lot of business reasons behind it. So
And when she says such a love and appreciation, y'all, she means such a love and appreciation.
I might have gone to like hundreds of concerts and met him and hung out with him dozens and dozens and dozens of time. And my husband might call my bookshelf my shrine to Bret Michaels. I'm just saying.
Yeah, with good reason. I've seen it. But we do, you're right. We pull a lot of business out of our joy, and hopefully we'll do the same thing today.
Absolutely. All right. So I want to dive in, first of all, and talk about LinkedIn.
Okay.
And the reason I want to start there is I think this year in particular, there's been so much volatility in paid ads and
Yeah.
things not working, and people really, kind of losing their love of social media in a lot of ways. And a lot of people have been changing their strategies. Some people are leaning more heavily onto organic marketing, others are saying no and goodbye to social media as a whole or to some of their channels. And I think that LinkedIn is going to have its place in the spotlight. It's definitely starting to get
Mhm.
more attention for those of us who work with other businesses in some capacity or
Yep.
serve people who are in the LinkedIn world. And I think that that's just going to keep on growing. I think there's been a lot of that this year. And I have historically not leveraged LinkedIn, even though I would tell anybody else who had my business to leverage LinkedIn.
Mhm.
So I called Annie because she's brilliant at LinkedIn and said, let's chat, let's map out what we're going to do, and then let's meet regularly so that we can hold me accountable because for
Yep.
some reason I avoid LinkedIn and I need to stop avoiding it. So I want to start there with what are you kind of seeing? What are you seeing that's
Mhm.
working? And what are some of those non obvious things that you're doing? Because you're doing some really clever stuff on LinkedIn.
So, LinkedIn, I I feel like I've spent this whole year talking about LinkedIn, and I had no anticipation at all, of talking about LinkedIn all year, and I'm so glad to talk about it because it kind of reminds me in a beautiful way of the early days of Facebook. So much potential, very minimal mess, right? And so we're looking at people breaking up with social media in all formats, but definitely people are getting pretty cranky at being at like the beck and call of Mark Zuckerberg and his algorithm on any given day, right? Like I spent so many random disparate years in Instagram jail last year. I have no idea why I was ever there. I could never reach anybody, and so I personally started to break up with social, and LinkedIn was encouraged to me. I'd kind of had a profile throughout, and I met this really incredible woman named Clarine Mitchell who specializes in LinkedIn. And I was already ramping up, but I didn't really know why. And then I met with her and she gave me the statistic, and I'm going to misquote it, but it's right about here. She said only 2% ish of users on LinkedIn are actually using it as a content platform. What? We are all freaking rich in content. We have libraries and libraries and libraries of content. We have years of blog posts and articles and questions and polls, and we've got it all. And LinkedIn is hungry for it because the majority of users are still treating LinkedIn like a job site. And it is a job site for people looking for jobs. But more than that, it is a curated content engine plus networking site, social networking. That's what it was all supposed to be. Back on Facebook, we were supposed to be able to find hot college kids to hook up with, right? The whole point was grow your network. On LinkedIn, if I'm there, I'm looking to meet someone or I'm looking to learn something, and that's it. Now, that being said, it's got all the mechanics of your favorite Facebook things. It's got chat. The chat feels a lot like AOL Instant Messenger 2001. I freaking love it. I'm all over it all day because it feels a little bit different than just standard DMs. You're building a relationship with someone. If I DM you on Instagram, you're like, okay, this person's DMing me on Instagram. They probably want something. If I DM you on LinkedIn, you go, okay, this person probably wants something. Let me go see their entire business. Click. And you can go right to their profile, right? So there's the chat, there's groups, which they're actively prioritizing. There's newsletters that have better freaking discoverability and email open rates than anything else in my business. And these are the lesser used tier of LinkedIn services. That's without them adding anything. right? So, first and foremost, if you're craving that old social media energy, that old excited MySpace, I might actually meet someone, live journal, this is where I go to appreciate and express my opinions, then LinkedIn is probably for you.
Absolutely. And so I know a lot of the listeners, unlike me, actually use LinkedIn.
Stop beating yourself up. We're working on it. We're working on it.
Maybe even by the time you listen to this episode, I will have a real LinkedIn presence. But that being said, for those who are already using LinkedIn, what are
Yes.
some of the things that you would recommend that would help them get far better results from what they're already doing? Or maybe some things that they're doing
Mhm.
today that you would recommend they not do in order to get the results that they're looking for?
Stop only sharing your boring, air quotes, professional content on LinkedIn. Now, there is a line. People don't want to go to LinkedIn and start seeing your cat videos unless your cat videos have something business related that you can pull, right? But I think my podcast has gone to show you can pull a business lesson out of pretty much anything, right? So don't post your frilliest and silliest unless you're going to pull business lessons out of it. But I hear from a lot of people who are starting to explore LinkedIn. Well, I don't know because everybody else is posting their articles from Forbes, and I don't know, like, do I have to wear a suit in my LinkedIn picture? There's this idea of having to dress to impress on LinkedIn. Drop it. Drop it. Keep it business related. Again, if I'm there to learn or to meet. Keep it business related. But if you want to have fun, have fun. Again, the site is hungry for it. Think about how easy an authentic, vibrant post with color or movement or video will stand out when everyone else is sharing Wall Street Journal articles, right? And then here comes you with a poll and a fabulous photo having some fun. Awesome. Hooray. We're hungry for that, right? So, my advice to everybody is lean into the joy of social networking like you would on Instagram, but give your photos meaning and then post them. Don't just post the photos. Make sense?
100% brilliant. I love it. And it really, my eyes have been opened a little bit because I very much had that LinkedIn is the place that you go to look for a job
Mhm.
or the place that you go for kind of the boring, dry content.
Yep.
And the last thing on earth I want is boring, dry content. So it just never really appealed to me until I realized that's perception, that's not reality. And so,
Yep.
for any of you who may have the same perception as me or former perception as I had, there's a lot more to it. And like all things, you can make it what you want to make it.
Not only
And
that, like I said before, you're sitting on a mountain of content. If you are listening to this show, if you are in business long enough to be leaning that sucker out, you have a lot of content. And so, not that I want to encourage anyone to spray and pray and neglect, absolutely not. However, LinkedIn is a repurposing gold mine. I use SmarterQ. SmarterQ is gorgeous. SmarterQ will actually pull old posts out of other social media and recycle them, reschedule them, and put them out wherever you want. A lot of the stuff I post on LinkedIn, spoiler, y'all, it's old Instagram. Now, my Instagram has always been a bit different. I've always been teaching over there, which is why I can do it. I don't post a lot of selfies. I don't post a lot of like life behind the scenes photos. I ask a lot of questions and I give a lot of reminders. Those work just as freaking well. So it doesn't have to be Instagram. But if you've been writing beautiful missives on a blog, podcast episodes, any of these things, repurpose your best, shine it up, make it look cute, throw it on LinkedIn. The amount I mean, I put all my old stuff in SmarterQ. I don't have to worry about content until 2024, maybe, but what that frees up time to do, and this is so critically important, is I'm not just saying, "Okay, cool, I have content through 2024." I'm saying I have space through 2024 to get in there and connect with people that are responding and engaging and sharing my stuff. I can take that time and I can actually have a deeper conversation and not just say, "Oh, great post," or "Thanks for commenting," to really get in there. And when I do really get in there, then the chat sitting right there waiting for me to go further with permission.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I'm going to ask you the question at the end, but I feel like that is the classic example of
Mhm.
working smarter, not harder. You are leveraging what you already have, you're optimizing what's already working well, and
Yep.
giving yourself the space to do the things that are actually going to make the difference and build
Mhm.
the connections that are going to give you new relationships, new partners, new clients, whatever it is that you're looking for on the platform instead of just focused on content, posting,
Yes.
and running away.
And the other thing I love about it, maybe even the most, is hearkening way back in digital entrepreneurship days. Let's go back to the classics. Seth Godin tribes. Seth said, in order to have a successful tribe, you have to have three kinds of communication. You have to have leader to member, member to leader, and member to member. A lot of us have the first 2. We have leader to member, member to leader, right? We've built that in. That's in our social, that's on Facebook, that's on Insta, a bit, that's our podcast. It's certainly the, leader to member is our broadcast platform, right? Maybe we have a comment forum, maybe we host a live event where they can come talk back to us. But what I don't see a ton of, especially for people like us who are constantly meeting new people by design, what was annoying me is that I would interview someone, and this would come up all the time with you. You're a perfect example. I would interview someone and I'd be like, "Oh my gosh." And then I would start talking about you like they already knew you. Because in my mind, I couldn't imagine a world where this person didn't know you. Why wouldn't they? They know me. Why wouldn't they know you? That's because that's not how that works. Right? That's not how that works. And so I would say to somebody, "Oh, well, have you talked to Krista about this?" And they'd go, "Who's Krista? What? What?" And so the thing I love the most about LinkedIn, I'm going to go ahead and call it the thing I love the most about LinkedIn is how easy it is for me to connect my Kristas with other Kristas. And then they go on and have a new relationship that has nothing to do with me, but just how all of my college friends are married to someone that I set them up with. Right? Now all of these new things are starting, conversations are happening, money is being exchanged, right? Brains are being blown, and I'm in the liner notes of that, which just
Mhm.
puts me deeper and deeper and deeper in the center of my ecosystem. It just even though your relationship with Sacred Walker, for example, someone we both love, has nothing independently to do with me, I still have a hand in the fact that you 2 know each other, and so that shows you and Sacred, Annie knows the best people, hang out in our orbit a little closer. That is the magic of LinkedIn because all I have to do is tag you both in a post and your entire business CV, your best content, your shiniest stuff, your contact information, and a way to reach you is right there. No emails, no social, just bam, bam.
Mhm. Brilliant. And some of the guests that have been on this podcast, some of the guests like Sacred who are coming up on the podcast, some things to
Mhm.
look forward to next year, they all came through Annie.
Yep.
So I love it.
But
Brilliant.
that's the
All
thing is
right.
you can build something bigger than you, and it's still lean because it's still purposeful, right? But then it's almost like taking your evangelists and having them throw a party with you and for you instead of just talking about you. Now they're receiving so much more from you. They're receiving that inside scoop. They're receiving that group feel.
Yeah. And now for all of you listening, you can see why I called Annie when I decided I was going to put a focus on LinkedIn in Q4.
And groups, I'll tell you the truth about groups. I recently hair flip, I recently, just got an email that said that I'm running one of the most engaged groups on LinkedIn. So, I felt really, really, really good about that. LinkedIn groups are in grade school if Facebook groups are in high school. They're not as refined. The algorithm's not as showy, but at the same point, they're growing and LinkedIn is prioritizing them. So if you're considering, I know a lot of people that are breaking up with Facebook, the hardest part for them, for a lot of business owners, is breaking up with their Facebook group. And I understand that. And I want to be realistic here. If you shut, and I've had both, if you shut down your Facebook group right now, you can recreate it on LinkedIn, but it's going to take a lot longer to build than it did on Facebook, right? You were using Facebook ads for that. You were using your own platform for that. People don't really remember that LinkedIn groups are a thing until you really remind them consistently. So, do I think you should shut down your Facebook group? Yeah. But do I think you should go into that with correct pacing and expectations? Absolutely. And I would make sure that you're hitting that Facebook group repeatedly. We're migrating to LinkedIn. We're migrating to LinkedIn. Get over here. Make sure you're here and give them something like a freebie or an event that they can look forward to celebrate the migration. But if you don't hit that hard, it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle. I just
Yeah.
want to be honest. I told them all the good stuff. I got to tell them the not
Mhm.
so great stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I do think though that there is an opportunity. I know for me myself, I've considered like I don't use Facebook. I do not use Facebook. I haven't
Yeah.
checked my personal feed in probably 20 years. Like I don't I'm not a fan of the platform, but I am a fan of my groups.
Mhm,
And so the only way that I use Facebook is I literally have my groups saved in a folder on my browser and I will go with intention into certain groups periodically to look. And of course, I'm in my own, but I don't ever go to the feed in Facebook. I don't remember
mhm,
the last time I ever went to the feed in Facebook. So unless
mm-mm.
I go somewhere with intention, I don't see things.
Right.
And that's by design. I don't want to be distracted by things. It's just not my jam. I'm an Instagram girl, not a Facebook person. But that being said, I could see a world where I don't even do that in the groups because I don't need
Mm-mm.
to.
No,
Yep.
it'll take some time. It will,
Mhm.
but it will get there, and other than to brag, I bring up the fact that I got that email from LinkedIn because that to me says that if they're sending stuff out about like, "Hey, you're in this group thing and you'll be able to test all these other things." Number 1, that shows me that they're monitoring. Number 2, it shows me that they're about to make waves. Right? If
Mhm.
they're rolling out I spent enough time working behind the scenes in a tech firm to know you don't send an email like that unless moves are being made and investments are being made and money is being allocated to make something better. You just don't. Why would you invite everybody to a concert that doesn't exist? You wouldn't. You would just let it lie, right? So
Mhm.
that really excites me for 2024.
Mhm.
But no reason you can't have a great time ahead of time. But no, it's gonna be smaller. When I closed Hustle Sisters down on Facebook, it was approaching 1,000 people. The Legitimati as it stands right now is 155, and it's taken months to get there, but every single person in that group is there because they wanna be there, not because they followed a Facebook ad and got a freebie.
Mhm. Yeah, big difference. Probably a whole lot difference from engagement and
Oh,
interaction.
yeah! I got a 70% engagement rate. Who
Mhm.
yeah, what? If any of us were getting 70% engagement rates on our Facebook group, we'd all be rich.
Seriously.
Like, we'd be
Can't even
retired.
imagine.
You and I would, like, have the island next to Necker Island. We wouldn't have to work anymore, right? But that's not how this works.
All right. So I feel like there are so many things we could just kind of talk for days on end. So I think where I want to go next with our little chat here, which I
Mhm.
think would be really valuable for people, one of your other things that you are just so incredibly brilliant at, in addition to sales, is marketing and messaging. I
Thank
think
you.
that is one of your absolute superpowers. And so, if we take this and kind of apply it not just to a brand, which I think is important too,
Mhm,
but how you show up on LinkedIn, how you represent your business and your brand on LinkedIn,
mhm.
are there any tips that you can share on how to stand out, how to be really clever and clear with your
Yes,
marketing? The clear
yes.
part being really
Oh, for
important, right?
God's sake,
Um,
yes.
so I'm gonna turn it over to you for all the marketing magic.
Okay, first of all, be clear, y'all. Please be clear. Oh, please be clear. I mentioned before that I was in software. Nothing murdered me more than like all of the inventive spellings that came out where like everything had a Y or two I's or like y'all. Just spell it how it's spelled, please, please, please. This is not the time because LinkedIn is a search engine. So if you're naming your stuff cutesy stuff, it's hard to find you. Now, one thing about LinkedIn to familiarize yourself with right now that's going to make everything easier. I am Annie P. Ruggles. I am the founder of the Non-Sleazy Sales Academy. I am the host of Too Legitimate to Quit. However, I show up on LinkedIn as Annie P. Ruggles umbrella brand. I show up as me. I have a company page. Tell you right now, it's got like 12 people following it. Again, it'll come when I have time to prioritize it. However, if people are on LinkedIn, they are there to meet someone or learn something. And if I'm going to show up, I'm going to show up in my introvert best networking thing. What does that mean? It means I'm going to have the lights on my profile and make sure it looks good. I'm going to have a conversation with the people that reach out to me. And when I'm conversating with people, when I'm commenting, when I'm posting, when I'm writing my own copy, sharing my own posts, I'm not going to do the dress to impress thing where I have to wear a suit in every photo, like we already talked about. I'm going to talk like me. So, if I just did this and it was a weird feeling and it felt really fun and it felt really awful and I did it anyway and I'm glad I did. My dear friend Jen McFarland, you know Jen. Jen posted something the other day and I was like, how would I, Annie P. Ruggles, respond to that? Annie P. Ruggles, founder of the Non-Sleazy Sales Academy, would get on there and go, "Oh, what an interesting idea, Jen. You know I love how your brain works. Here's what I think. Dee. There's a time and a place for that. It's important. But Jen is my friend, and people are meeting me through Jen as her friend. So what did I write? I wrote, brilliant brain, brilliant photo. Where did you get that top? I would never have thought to put that on LinkedIn. And again, it's not Facebook. I didn't just say, hey, babe, cute top. But I added some me on it so that anybody in those comments are like, "Who's this Looney Tunes?" Type it in all caps. Click. And then everything they find on my profile is cohesive, right? One of the main things we do, and I think it's because I have a branding and marketing background in my business, is I help people stop writing like their former corporate selves. LinkedIn is the perfect place to experiment with that. Treat everyone there like your cousin. You've got familiarity. You're still gonna be polite. They're not your sibling, they're your cousin, right? They're not your mom, they're your cousin. So you're not gonna go in and be like, "What up, bitch?" Like, you're not gonna do that. But also at the same point, if you wanna say "hey" instead of "hello," or send a message with like, "Wow, your profile's awesome," instead of "I stumbled across your profile today," then do it because people wanna meet you and feel you. So don't formalize yourself into a box. It's unnecessary. Now, also on the same token, if you're not a zany Muppet like me, just show up and be friendly. It's not you're not gonna get a TED Talk out of this. You don't have to be the most impressive person in the room. Just be real. If you like somebody's content, tell them so and tell them why, right? Because we haven't even talked about that. We've been talking about posting, keeping the lights on, how you show up. The main way you're gonna grow your network on LinkedIn is to get in there and engage with the gifts of content that you're being offered. See who you like, see whose stuff resonates with you, and you take it on yourself to deepen that connection. If you're not showing up as yourself and you're not using it for social listening, those two things just can't happen.
I love it. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. So, I can't believe we are almost at time. I don't want us
What?
to almost be at time, but we
What?
are.
Oh my goodness.
Time flies when you're having way too much fun. So, I need to ask
Yeah.
because I want to hear how your answer has evolved or if your answer is still the same since episode 7. But
Ooh.
In your business currently, how are you working smarter, not harder, and keeping things lean?
Oh boy. How am I working smarter and not harder in keeping things lean? I'm leveraging my relationships. The repurposing stuff is big. That was gonna be my first answer, right? Like, I have a treasure trove, farm it out, put it back out. That's a biggie, but I think that's probably my answer last time or something similar. Looking at 100 episodes of a podcast now, I know it's different because you also do solo episodes, right? But just approximate, Krista, in 100 episodes, how many people do you think you've interviewed?
Probably about 50 that have published so far.
Yeah, okay. That's 50 people who understand your heart, your work, and your mission. Most of the people that I know that are having conversations like these, that's where the relationship ends. Maybe they reach back out when the podcast is there to say, "Hey, thanks again for coming. Here's a audiogram you can share." What if it didn't have to be? Right? Part of what I'm doing with LinkedIn, with the Legitimati, with the parties that I throw, with making sure that I'm always connecting Kristas to other Kristas is so that it's not a single serving friendship. If I do the legwork to deepen the relationship, not with everybody, not with every single person, but with the people that get those 3 things, my heart, my brain, and my vision. Deepening those relationships doesn't take long, doesn't cost anything, and has turned guests into evangelists for me so that I can have something like an affiliate program, whereas before I just had conversations. So that is now 100 episodes later how I'm working smarter instead of harder.
I love it. And Annie is one of the most brilliant entrepreneurs that I know and one of the most amazing humans that I know. So you definitely, definitely want to be in her world. Not only is it always entertaining and fun, but seriously, you will not only learn a lot, but she just does things in such a clever and interesting way. And she really taps into a lot of what other people aren't doing, which is what I appreciate so, so much. So tell people where they can find you, where they can find more about you, where they can listen to your amazing podcast. Tell them all the things.
Well, if you're following Krista, I'm never far away because I am Krista's biggest fan. However, we just spent a whole hour talking about LinkedIn. Get on LinkedIn, look me up, Annie P. Ruggles. If you type in Ruggles, I'll come up. Or my cute little hobbit husband, friend him. Who cares? But I'll add you to Legitimati. I'll show you how to run a newsletter. I'll do whatever. So find me on LinkedIn. And then if you're also in a joyful learning place, head on over to the podcast, wherever you're listening to this. Same player, head on over to Too Legitimate to Quit. I'm right there waiting for you. And don't forget to check out Krista's amazing, weirdly informative episode about her utter devotion to Brett Michaels.
So true. And now I do want to just spend our last moment here before we wrap up is we didn't talk about the core of your business and what you
Uh-huh.
really do and help your clients with because we were tapping deep into your brilliant brain. So I do encourage you to go back and listen to episode 7 where you'll learn more about that. But can you give everybody the Cliffs Notes version about what you do and how you typically work with your clients in case they want to know more
Mhm.
about your core business function?
Over delivering. It's not a victimless crime. You will put yourself out of business unless you learn to receive. Most people don't ask because they don't know how to ask in a way that doesn't feel gross. And it's constantly re-stigmatized that asking is gross. So if you want to ask as yourself and receive as yourself instead of like a Grant Cardone clone or, whatever you were taught to do in your middle management job, then come on over to the Non-Sleazy Sales Academy and I will empower you to sell as you.
Amazing. Annie, so much brilliance in our short time together. Thank you so much for being here. All of her links will be down below in the show notes. Really, seriously, go check her out. You will be super happy that you did so. Annie, we'll have you back on again, I'm sure, maybe for 200,
Episode
150.
200! Woo! Woo! Woo!
Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you all got as much value out of this episode as I did. I will see you again next week. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. I hope you got a lot of value and actionable insights from today's show and would love if you take a moment to leave us a review. If you have any questions on today's episode or on how to lean out your business, join us over in our private Facebook community where every week we do live training and Q&A, and I'd love to have you be part of the conversation. Head to leanoutmethod.com/group to join us. And before you go, be sure to subscribe to the show so you're the first to know when we release a new episode. We'll see you next week.